I never imagined that the same streets that once applauded my arrival would one day humble me like a child who had forgotten his first prayer. Lagos had crowned me king of glass and steel, the man they called Iron Lion, but that evening as my driver slowed the car along the uneasy stretch beneath Oberlin Bridge, I felt stripped of all titles. The city breathed heavily, like an old woman with many memories. Hawkers shouted, buses groaned, and the air carried the mixed smell of roasted corn, sweat, fried plantain and dust. This was the Lagos I had left behind years ago when my life transformed from struggle to silk. I used to say money had elevated me. That night I suspected it had only wrapped chains around my soul. Then I saw her. At first, my eyes refused to accept what they beheld. Surely the woman sitting on flattened cartons could not be Amici. The Amici who once washed my torn shirts with soft hands. The Amici who sang gospel hymns in the kitchen while stirring egusi soup. The Amici who believed in my dream even when I had nothing but borrowed courage. But when the flickering street light fell on her face and I saw the familiar curve of her lips and the quiet depth of her eyes, my heart staggered like a drunk man in church. "Amici," I whispered. My driver glanced back at me. "Sir?" "Stop the car." He hesitated. "This area is not safe, sir." "Stop it now." The vehicle rolled to a slow halt, and I stepped out before reason could drag me back inside. The ground felt unfamiliar beneath my Italian shoes. The night air wrapped itself around me like an old accusation. As I walked closer, I saw how thin she had become, how time and sorrow had carved themselves into her face. She was speaking gently to a little girl beside her, dividing a sachet of groundnuts between them. Even now she shared what little she had. That was always Amici. She could be drowning and still offer her breath to another. "Amici," I called again, louder this time. She raised her head slowly, and our eyes collided like broken history. Shock passed over her face, quickly replaced by a guarded calm. The warmth that once welcomed me home was gone, replaced by a wall of quiet dignity. "Chinedu?" she asked as if afraid the name might burn her tongue. "Is this another dream I didn't invite?" I swallowed hard. "It's me." She studied me from head to toe, then let out a soft, dry laugh. "Of course it is. Lagos can be cruel but not creative enough to invent you." My voice trembled when I replied. "What are you doing here?" "Surviving," she said simply, as if that one word carried all the explanation the world deserved. I looked around at the cartons, the threadbare wrapper, the tired blanket that barely shielded her from the cold night wind. "You shouldn't be here," I murmured. "This is no place for you." "And where is my place, Chinedu?" she asked, her eyes sharp. "In the palace of regrets you live in? Or the guest room of your conscience? I never wanted this for you." Her lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "But you created it." Those words struck harder than any slap could have done. I remembered the day I had chosen power over her, status over sincerity. The senator's daughter over the woman who prayed for me on bare knees. I remembered telling Amici that love does not build skyscrapers. I wondered now if skyscrapers could ever build peace. "Please," I said quietly, "let me help you." She shook her head. "Help is a luxury reserved for people with clean hands." "I know I hurt you," I said, my voice low with regret. "But seeing you like this, it's tearing me apart." "Tearing you apart?" she scoffed. "You tore me apart first, Chinedu. Years ago. This is just the echo." I knelt in front of her, ignoring the startled glances of passers-by. "Amici, I'm not the same man you left behind. Life has punished me too." Her eyes searched my face as if looking for truth inside my expensive skin. "Money has a way of changing faces. It does not change memory." "I am begging you," I said, my pride dissolving on the pavement of my mistakes. "Come with me. Just for tonight. Sleep somewhere safe." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the nylon bag that held all she owned. "I have survived this long without your charity." "It's not charity," I whispered. "It's repentance." The street grew silent around us as if even the night was waiting for her reply. Amici looked down, then at the little girl beside her, then back at me. "Just tonight," she sighed at last. "Because even broken wings deserve rest. But do not mistake this for forgiveness." Relief flooded my chest as I helped her to her feet. Her body felt lighter than I remembered, like a shadow trying not to exist. When she entered my car, she pressed her head lightly against the window, staring at the city with eyes that had known too much sorrow. The drive to my guest house felt heavy with unspoken history. I wanted to apologize, to explain, to confess everything I had buried under success and silence, but the words refused to come. When we arrived, she stood by the entrance, hesitant and unsure. This world no longer recognizes me, she murmured. It once revolved around your kindness, I replied. She looked at me, surprised by the gentleness in my voice. Then she stepped inside. As she disappeared down the hallway with my housekeeper, 1,000 memories rushed into my mind. Her laughter. Her cooking. Her stubborn faith in my potential. I remembered her mother warning me, if you hurt this girl, heaven will remember your name. And heaven had not forgotten. When she returned, freshly bathed and clothed in clean fabric, she almost looked like the Amici I had loved, except her eyes held a depth that only suffering could teach. Why now, Chinedu? She asked softly. Why did you come back into my life when I had already taught my heart to walk without you? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Because the truth was too heavy and too fragile to drop at her feet. Instead, I simply said, because some encounters are not accidents. They are the echoes of things we never finished. She stared at me in silence, and in that quiet, my guilt rose like flood water. Outside, thunder growled in the distance, promising a storm. And deep within me, a chilling realization began to form. This reunion was not mercy. It was the beginning of a reckoning. Amici slept in the guest room that night, but sleep refused to enter my own. I lay on my wide king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling that had witnessed countless business calls, strategic plans, and lonely victories. Yet none of those sleepless nights compared to this one. This night carried her breath, her presence, her silent sorrow moving through the corridors of my house like a forgotten hymn. I could still hear her voice from earlier, soft but edged with pain. Do not mistake this for forgiveness. Forgiveness. That word had become a foreign language to me. At some point, I rose from bed and walked quietly toward her door. I didn't knock. I stood there, listening to the faint rhythm of her breathing, remembering how I used to watch her sleep in our cramped single-room apartment years ago. Back then, the world was small but our love was large. Now the world was massive and my heart felt strangely empty. Money had built me walls taller than this mansion. By morning, I found her sitting by the window, wrapped in a borrowed robe, watching the early Lagos sun stretch across the lawn. The light fell gently on her face, highlighting lines that had not been there before. Each line whispered a story I was afraid to hear. You didn't sleep, I said softly. She turned slightly. When you have lived on the streets, comfort feels suspicious. I poured tea and placed it on the table beside her. This is not a trap, Amici. This house will not swallow you. She gave a faint smile. It already belongs to a man who once swallowed my future. The words stung, but they were deserved. I took a seat opposite her. Silence settled between us like heavy dust. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Do you know what hurts most, Chinedu? I shook my head. It's not that you left me. It's that you left so easily. As if love was an expired contract. My chest tightened. I was a coward, I admitted. And ambition disguised itself as wisdom. She looked at me carefully as if weighing my honesty. You told me love wouldn't feed us. That a powerful wife would open doors for you. And you were right. Look at you now, the city bows at your feet. And yet, I murmured, I bow to the ghost of the woman I broke. Her lips pressed together, fighting emotion. I did not come here to reopen old wounds. I only needed a place to rest. You can stay as long as you want, I said quickly. This is your home too. She laughed lightly but without joy. It stopped being my home the day your goodbye echoed louder than your promises. Her phoneless world fascinated me. I realized she had nothing. No bag that spoke of stability. No trace of the life she once dreamed of with me. Everything had been swallowed by struggle. Amici, I said gently, how long have you been on the streets? She looked down at her hands. Long enough for the rain to know my name. I swallowed, unsure how to respond. I tried, Chinedu, she continued, her voice thick with memory. I cleaned houses. I sold food by the roadside. I worked in a small clinic as a cleaner. But life is not kind to women without umbrella. Especially women with no man beside them. Guilt surged like a rising tide. You endured all this alone? I had no choice, she replied. When your back turns, loneliness becomes a daily meal. I leaned forward. Why didn't you find me? Tell me you're suffering? She stared at me sharply. And say what? The man who left me for wealth should now rescue me because wealth has hugged him? Pride may starve you, Chinedu, but it also preserves what little dignity remains. Her honesty cut deeply. What about your family? I asked. A shadow crossed her face. They disappeared when my father died. I was no longer useful. She would have been proud of you, I murmured, remembering her late mother. Amici sighed. Sometimes I still hear her voice when the nights are cold. Silence followed again, heavy and raw. I want to help you rebuild, I said slowly. Not as the man who left, but as the man who finally understands what he destroyed. She looked at me, eyes filled with reluctant emotion. You cannot rebuild a tree that has learned to survive as broken branches. Then let me sit beneath it, I replied. Even if its shade no longer loves the sun. She said nothing. Later that afternoon I arranged for a doctor to visit just to check her health. She protested but eventually allowed it. As the doctor examined her, I paced the hallway like a guilty man awaiting judgment. When the doctor emerged, his face was serious. She's malnourished, he said. Physically weak. And sir? He hesitated, lowering his voice. There are signs of emotional trauma. Deep trauma. My chest tightened. Trauma. What kind? I asked quietly. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. Possibly abuse. Not recent but significant. My heart clenched violently. Rage trembled beneath my skin. Someone had hurt her. Hurt the woman I once loved. And I had not been there to protect her. After the doctor left, I stood by the staircase as she made her way down slowly. You heard him? She asked, already knowing the answer. I did, I said. Who did that to you? She looked away. The past is a graveyard. Stop digging. But I need to know who damaged your spirit. Her voice dropped into something low and distant. Many things break a woman, Chinidu. Sometimes it's not just one hand. It's the weight of silence. The cruelty of time. The absence of safety. And I was absent, I whispered. She did not deny it. Evening fell again and the house swallowed another sunset. Amici walked to the balcony and stared into the distance, as if someone beyond the horizon still called her name. I walked up beside her. You can trust me again, I said softly. Not as your lover but as your ally. She turned suddenly, her eyes sharp, almost fearful. You can never be just my ally, Chinidu. Your presence reopens doors I buried with my pride. What doors? I asked very quietly. A flicker of panic crossed her face, quickly masked by forced calm. Some doors should never be reopened. Especially those that hide truth. A chill crept through my spine. What truth, Amici? I pressed gently. What are you afraid I might discover? She looked at me long and hard, then turned away, whispering something so faint it felt like wind passing through sorrow. Because if you discover it, she said, you may never look at your own life the same way again. And in that moment, as darkness wrapped around the mansion and her silhouette stood fragile against the fading sky, I realized this was not just a reunion. It was the prelude to something that could shatter us both. And the truth she feared was already breathing behind the walls of our past. That night, I watched Amici the way a man watches a fragile flame, afraid that a single breath might erase it forever. She hardly spoke during dinner, only nodded politely when my housekeeper addressed her. I could see it in her eyes, she did not want to feel comfortable. Comfort had betrayed her too many times. When she finally retired to her room, I remained seated at the dining table long after the plates had been cleared. Her words echoed through my mind like drums in a silent village square. Some doors should never be reopened. I wondered which door she meant. I wondered what part of my past carried a truth so terrible that she trembled at its shadow. Sleep avoided me again, and sometime after midnight I found myself walking toward the guest wing without intending to. As I passed by her door, I heard soft sounds, not cries but broken whispers as if someone was arguing with memory. Amici? I called gently. There was no response. I knocked lightly. It's me. Chinidu. Silence. Just as I turned to leave, the door opened slightly and she stood there, her eyes wet, her hair loose around her shoulders like a surrendered crown. What is it? She asked. You were talking, I said. Are you okay? She chuckled bitterly. Do people who are okay talk to ghosts? My stomach tightened. What ghosts? The ones created by love, she whispered. I stepped closer. The air between us felt heavy, charged, fragile. You don't have to carry them alone, I said. Her eyes searched mine, as if confirming whether my concern was genuine or just another performance of guilt. Then she stepped aside slowly. Come in, she murmured. The room smelled faintly of soap and quiet sorrow. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded tightly as if holding back a storm. You remember the year you left? She asked without looking at me. Yes, I said. It destroyed me. She let out a fragile laugh. No, Chinidu. It destroyed me. I swallowed hard. I stayed in that one-room apartment for months after you walked away, she continued. I waited for your footsteps. I imagined your voice outside the door. I clung to the foolish hope that you would realize wealth is cold without love. A deep ache bloomed in my chest. But you never came, she went on. And life has no patience for dreamers. What happened? I asked quietly. She stared at the wall as though her story was written there. A man helped me, she said slowly. He said he admired my strength. He promised I would never sleep hungry again. My heart clenched. At first he was kind. He paid my rent, bought groceries, gave me a job at his small business. I thought maybe God had not forgotten me after all. Her fingers trembled slightly. Then the kindness started feeling like ownership. I leaned forward. Amici. He said I owed him, she whispered. That I had consumed too much generosity to walk away. Rage ignited under my skin. So he took what he said belonged to him, she continued, voice shaking now. Not once. Not twice. Many times. And every time I told myself survival is not safety. I stood abruptly, my fists clenched. Who was he? I demanded. Tell me his name. Her eyes lifted, filled with a mixture of pain and warning. Do not let anger take you to places your conscience cannot return from. I don't care, I snapped. He violated you. And you abandoned me, she replied softly. So we both played our roles. Her words silenced me like a cold blade to the throat. I eventually escaped, she said. But his shadow followed me through poverty, sickness, and sleepless nights. That is how I ended up on the streets. Not because I was weak, but because I was tired of fighting invisible wars. I sat slowly beside her, my soul trembling. I had no idea your life spiraled like this. You were too busy building heaven with glass windows, she murmured. Tears blurred my vision. I wish I could undo all of it. You cannot rewrite pain, she said. But you can choose not to repeat it. Her eyes softened slightly. But there is something you still don't understand, Chinedu. What? I asked. She inhaled unevenly. What happened after you left did not only break me. A strange tension crept into the room. It created something, she added quietly. I felt my heart pound. Created what? Her gaze held mine in a way that frightened and fascinated me at once. A life, she whispered. My breath caught sharply. And that life, she continued hesitantly, became the reason I survived when everything else told me to stop breathing. The world tilting slightly, I whispered, Amici, what are you saying? She looked away, pressing her trembling palms together. Some truths change the shape of everything they touch. My throat tightened. You mean? A knock suddenly broke the moment, sharp and intrusive. Sir, my security guard called from outside the door. There's a woman at the gate. She insists on seeing you immediately. She says it concerns Amici. Amici's body froze instantly. Her face drained of every trace of color. Who is she? I asked, my voice thick with confusion. Amici swallowed slowly, fear flickering behind her eyes. If that woman has found me, she whispered, then the life I spoke of might already be standing at your doorstep. A cold dread crawled through my veins. And when you see her, Amici added, her voice barely more than breath, you will understand why forgiving me may become impossible. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed louder down the hallway, heavy and filled with urgency. Whoever had arrived had not come as a guest. They had come as a storm. And something inside me knew. My past was no longer outside this gate. It had finally come home. I watched Adekunle from the corner of my eye as we drove through the busy streets of Lagos, his driver navigating traffic with patience while the city roared around us. From the tinted glass, I saw life continuing for everyone else. Women with neat wigs rushing to offices, schoolchildren laughing, hawkers shouting prices, lovers holding hands. Life was moving. But for me, time felt broken, like a clock that had forgotten how to tick. I wondered what people would think if they knew the billionaire in the front seat was once the boy who swore he would marry me under the mango tree behind my aunt's compound in Surulere. Amara, he called softly, pulling me out of my thoughts. Yes. I replied, still staring outside. You're quiet. There's nothing left to say. That's not true. I finally turned to look at him. What exactly do you think we should discuss, Adekunle? The day you sent your lawyer to pack my things? Or the day your mother told me I was a village girl who would pollute their bloodline? His jaw tightened. I never wanted it to happen that way. But it did, I said flatly. And here I am, looking exactly like the future you wanted to erase. The car slowed as we approached a gated building, tall and polished, guarded like a fortress. I could already tell this was not an ordinary apartment. Everything about Atakunnel's world now smelled of money, control, and careful perfection. The driver opened the door for me, and a slight wave of shame swept over me as people glanced at my worn clothes and bare feet. I held my head high anyway. Poverty had bruised me, but it had not yet bent my spine. Inside, the apartment was silent and immaculate, as though no one truly lived there. The walls were decorated with expensive art, but none of it had warmth. No laughter lived here. No memories breathed here. Just space and wealth. "You can freshen up," he said. "There's a bathroom on your left." I had clothes arranged. "You shouldn't stay in those." "Are you ashamed of them?" I asked. "No," he replied immediately. "I'm ashamed that life allowed you to wear them." I didn't answer. I walked slowly to the bathroom, and when the door shut behind me, I finally allowed myself to look at my reflection properly. The woman staring back at me looked nothing like the girl Atakunnel once loved. My cheeks were hollow. My eyes carried too much sorrow. My hair was rough, uneven, tired. I looked like someone the world had forgotten on purpose. I turned on the shower, letting warm water rush down my body, washing off dust, sweat, and shame. As it touched my skin, memories flooded my mind. The first time Atakunnel bought me soap with strawberries in it, laughing as he said, "A queen must smell like sweetness." Tears slid down my face silently. After dressing in the simple clean clothes he provided, I stepped out. He was seated on the couch, his phone forgotten in his hand, staring at nothing. For a billionaire, he looked unsettlingly lonely. "You look like yourself again," he murmured. "Do I?" I asked. "Or do I just look like a woman you feel guilty for destroying?" He flinched slightly. "I never stopped caring about you, Amara." "That's the problem, Atakunnel," I replied. "Your care has always arrived too late." A gentle knock interrupted us. The housekeeper entered with a tray of food. The aroma of jollof rice and grilled fish filled the air, and my stomach betrayed me with a soft growl. He noticed and gave a faint smile. "You used to love this." "I still do," I admitted quietly. "Please eat," he pleaded. Reluctantly, I sat and picked up the spoon. The first bite reminded me of warmth, home, and the girl I used to be before life stripped her bare. He watched as though every movement of mine mattered. "Where did everything go wrong?" he asked suddenly. I paused. "The day you started listening to your mother more than your heart." He closed his eyes briefly. "She said you trapped me with love. That you would become a burden. And you believed her." "I believed fear," he said. "Fear that I would lose everything." "So you lost me instead." "Yes." Silence wrapped around us like a heavy cloth. "You know," I continued, my voice thinner now, "I slept under the bridge for 3 nights after your driver dropped me off that day. I waited for you to change your mind. I waited for you to call. I waited for a miracle." He looked up sharply. "You never told me. You never asked. What about your aunt? Your family?" "My aunt said I brought shame by loving a rich man who discarded me. She closed her doors." Pain flickered wildly in his eyes. "Amara, I learned to sell fruits. I learned to beg. I learned to smile when men touched me the wrong way just to survive." My voice trembled now, and yet I refused to stop. "And every night I asked God why the man who promised me forever chose comfort over loyalty." His hand slowly clenched. "I didn't come here for your pity," I added softly. "But if you truly want honesty, then know this. Your absence broke something in me that no amount of money can fix." He stood up, walking toward me carefully like approaching a wounded animal. "I wish I could reverse time," he said. "I wish I could undo everything. You can't rewrite pain, Atakunnel. You can only acknowledge it." He stopped a few feet away. "Then let me start by acknowledging this. I was wrong. And I am sorry." The silence that followed those words was almost sacred. The kind of quiet that carries forgiveness and warfare in the same breath. "Why did you really leave me?" I asked suddenly. "Not the excuses. Not your mother. The real reason." His face hardened. A shadow passed over it. "You don't want to know that truth," he said carefully. "I've lived through the streets. I can survive truth." He exhaled slowly. "The day I chose to walk away, someone came to me. Someone with power. Someone who promised that if I continued loving you, you would never find peace." My blood ran cold. "Who?" He hesitated. "Atakunnel," I pressed, fear rising. "Who threatened us?" Before he could answer, his phone vibrated violently on the table. He glanced at the screen, eyes widening. The name displayed made his face tighten as though he had seen a ghost. He slowly picked it up, his voice strained as he spoke. "You're not supposed to be here," he said quietly. I stood frozen. "Who is that?" His gaze lifted to me, filled with an emotion I had never seen before. Fear. She found you, he whispered. What do you mean? His phone trembled slightly in his hand. The woman who made me abandon you is back in Lagos. And just as my heart pounded violently in my chest, the doorbell rang, sharp, demanding, like destiny knocking without mercy. The doorbell sounded again, sharper this time, like it knew it was not welcome but refused to care. My breath hung in my throat as I stared at Adekunle, searching his face for reassurance, for an explanation, for anything that made sense. But all I saw was a man trapped between the past and the present, and fear sitting heavily in his eyes. Don't open it, I whispered. He hesitated, then slowly walked toward the door anyway. She won't leave until she is heard, he murmured, more to himself than to me. She has already destroyed enough, I said, my voice trembling. You owe her nothing. He paused, his hand resting on the door handle. I owe you the truth, he said quietly. And then he opened the door. The woman standing outside looked nothing like the ghost I had imagined. She was tall, elegant, dressed in a finely tailored cream suit, her hair pulled back tightly in a way that screamed control and dominance. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, and cold, the type that could ruin lives without raising her voice. So this was the woman who had ended my world. Good evening, Adekunle, she said smoothly, stepping past him without invitation. Her gaze shifted to me, measuring, judging, dissecting. So this is her. I stiffened, my fingers curling instinctively. And you must be the devil in human skin, I replied before fear could silence me. A faint, humorless smile pulled at her lips. Still fiery. You always were, Amara. My stomach twisted. You know me? Of course, she said. I know everything about you. I knew you before Adekunle even dared to call your name again. Adekunle frowned. Clara, why are you here? So this was Clara. The woman he married. The woman whose shadow haunted my pain even on the streets. She turned to him, her eyes colder now. Because the secret you both buried is clawing its way back to the surface. And if I'm going to drown, I won't drown alone. My heart pounded wildly. What secret? Clara walked further into the apartment, as though she owned the air we breathed. You see, Amara, she said calmly, you were never discarded because you weren't good enough. You were removed because you were dangerous. Adekunle snapped, Stop it. She laughed softly. You never let me finish my sentence back then either, did you? Her gaze returned to me. You were dangerous because you carried something that could have shattered an empire. My blood turned cold. I don't understand. But you do, she replied sharply. You just chose survival over memory. Adekunle's voice trembled. Clara, don't. What? She snapped. After all these years, you still protect her? I protect truth, he said firmly. Then let her hear it, she scoffed. Let her know why her life turned into ashes. I felt dizzy. If either of you continues speaking in riddles, I swear I will walk out of this apartment and never return, billionaire or not. Clara studied me for a long moment, then slowly reached into her handbag and pulled out a worn envelope. The edges looked old, like something that had survived time and tears. You dropped this the night you collapsed outside the hospital, she said. I stared at it, my hands shaking as I collected it from her. The sight of my old handwriting on the front froze my breath. My name. My hospital number. My signature. Impossible, I whispered. You forgot a lot, Amara, Clara continued. Mainly because your body chose not to remember the trauma it carried. Adekunle stepped forward. You promised not to use this against her. And you promised never to find her again, she snapped back. My fingers slowly opened the envelope, revealing photocopied documents that made my vision blur. Medical reports. Dates. Ultrasound images. My heart slammed violently against my ribs. No, I breathed. No, no, no. Clara's voice softened wickedly. You don't remember, do you? The night you fainted? The night the doctors called Adekunle urgently? Adekunle looked away. You were pregnant, Amara, she said. The world tilted. Pregnant. The word echoed endlessly in my mind as the room spun around me. That's not possible, I whispered, though my hands trembled violently over the pages. I would have remembered a child. You remembered losing everything, Clara said, but your mind buried the rest to keep you alive. I turned to Adekunle, tears filling my eyes. Is this true? His silence was louder than any scream. Adekunle, my voice broke. Did I carry your child? He swallowed hard, pain rippling across his expression. Yes. The word felt like a dagger splitting me open. What happened to my baby? Clara exhaled deeply, crossing her arms. Complications. Stress. Emotional trauma. Your collapse caused the pregnancy to terminate before it could fully form. I staggered backward as if struck. Images of sleepless nights, sickness, hunger on the streets rushed back in fragmented flashes. How had I forgotten? You let me believe I simply lost everything, I cried. You let me walk the streets thinking I only lost love, not a child. Adekunle stepped closer, desperation flooding his tone. You were unconscious for days. When you woke, your mind rejected the memory. Doctors said bringing it up could destroy you. My mother insisted it stayed buried. Clara laughed bitterly. And I insisted too. Because a poor girl carrying the air of a billionaire was not part of our perfect arrangement. My legs trembled as I held onto the table for balance. You both stole my grief. You were already drowning, Adekunle whispered painfully. I thought forgetting would protect you. You thought. I screamed. You thought silence was mercy? He looked shattered. I never knew how to save you without hurting you. Tears burned down my cheeks, now raw and unstoppable. So what now? You ruined my heart, erased my child, and now rescue me like a charity case. Clara picked up her handbag. We're not finished, she said coldly. That child did not disappear as easily as you both believe. My head snapped up. What do you mean? Her gaze shifted between us, and for the first time, something resembling dread flickered through her composure. There was a second diagnosis, she said slowly. One that Adekunle never read. My breath caught painfully. A second heartbeat was detected, she continued. A twin. Adekunle froze. I froze. Clara's voice lowered to a chilling whisper. One survived. The room collapsed into silence, heavy and dangerous. And as my entire world buckled beneath that revelation, Clara's lips curved faintly. And if you think forgetting was your punishment, she added, wait until you find out where that child has been all these years. My heart stopped. Where? I whispered, barely breathing. Clara glanced toward the door as footsteps echoed faintly outside the apartment hallway. Coming closer than either of you is ready for, she said. And just as realization clawed through my chest, the door handle began to turn again, slowly, deliberately. Who was about to walk into my life? And what truth would finally destroy what little strength I had left? The door creaked open slowly, deliberately, as though time itself was afraid of what lay on the other side. My heart pounded so violently I could feel it in my throat, my ears, even the trembling tips of my fingers. Every breath I took felt borrowed, fragile, uncertain. Adekunle stood stiff beside me. Clara's lips carried that same cruel half-smile, the expression of someone who enjoyed watching other people break. A young girl stepped into the apartment. She could not have been more than 16 or 17. Tall, graceful, with deep brown skin that glowed softly under the apartment lights. Her eyes were large and searching, filled with confusion and quiet fear. But what silenced the air was not her presence alone. It was her face. My face. The same curve of cheekbones. The same slope of nose. The same dimple that appeared faintly when confusion tugged at her lips. And in her eyes, the unmistakable shadow of Adekunle's gaze. I staggered back. No, I whispered, my voice cracking into fragments. This is not real. The girl's gaze met mine, her brows knitting together. Madam, she said softly. Who are you? Clara stepped forward, gesturing toward me like a cruel presenter unveiling a final exhibit. Meet your mother, she announced. The word hit like thunder. Mother. My knees weakened, and only the table behind me saved me from collapsing fully. I stared at the girl, the child I had carried inside me and never knew survived. Flesh of my flesh. Blood of my blood. And she did not even know me. Adekunle's lips parted, trembling. Zainab, he whispered. The girl turned sharply toward him. You said she was someone important, she said to Clara, her voice shaking slightly. You said she needed to see me. Clara smiled thinly. And now you see why. My hands trembled as I stepped forward, every movement cautious, like approaching a fragile dream. What is your name? I asked gently. Zainab, she replied. The name rolled through me like fire and water at once. My baby, I breathed. She flinched. I'm not your baby, Zainab said defensively, her voice cracking. I grew up without a mother. Don't confuse me. The pain of her words sliced me open deeper than anything Adekunle ever did. I didn't choose to leave you, I whispered, my voice barely holding. I didn't even know you existed. She looked at Clara, uncertainty clouding her eyes. Is this true? Clara tilted her head. Partially. Your mother lost memory after trauma. Very convenient, isn't it? Zainab's eyes returned to me, guarded now. So I was abandoned? No, I cried. Never by choice. I was homeless. Broken. I believe the child I carried died. Atakunal stepped forward. I swear, Zainab, I didn't know you survived either. My mother arranged everything. They transferred you out of Lagos without my consent. Zainab stiffened. Her? She murmured. You mean the woman who sent me to a charity home and called me a disgrace? My breath hitched violently. A charity home, I repeated. Clara sighed dramatically. Your grandmother believed your existence would ruin the prestige of the family name. So she paid well to erase you. I looked at her with burning fury. You watched them steal my child and did nothing. I watched them protect an empire, she replied coldly. Love doesn't run corporations, Amara. Zainab suddenly spoke, her voice trembling with bottled pain. You all talk about money and shame, but what about me? Do any of you understand what it feels like to grow up thinking your mother threw you away like garbage? My heart shattered in silence. I would have died 1,000 times for you, I whispered, tears spilling freely now. Every night on the streets, something inside me cried without knowing why. That cry was you. She looked away, jaw tight, conflicted. Clara stepped aside, folding her arms. The truth is out. Your emotional reunion is none of my concern. What matters now is that Zainab is legally tied to the Atakunal Empire, and the media will not remain silent once this surfaces. Atakunal turned sharply to her. This is why you brought her here? To blackmail me? Not just you, she replied smoothly. Both of you. I frowned. Explain. She walked toward the balcony, enjoying the drama. There is a trust fund established in Zainab's name that your mother created years ago to silence the issue. It activates when she turns 18. Atakunal froze. That money was meant to remain dormant. Not anymore, Clara replied. Unless certain deals are renegotiated. My blood turned cold. What deals? Her gaze returned to me slowly. You walk away. Again. This time permanently. No public claim. No emotional drama. No family reunion on social media. And Zainab remains shielded. And if I refuse? I demanded. A cruel smile curled her lips. Then the world learns a billionaire abandoned a pregnant girl and disowned his child. Investors hate scandal. The silence that followed was suffocating. Zainab looked between us, confused. So I'm just a liability again? No, Atakunal said sharply. You are my daughter. Those words hung heavy as rain clouds. Zainab swallowed. Then prove it. Don't let anyone control my life ever again. I stepped closer to her, my heart aching painfully. I want to know you. I want to learn your favorite color, your fears, your dreams. I want to be your mother in every way I failed to be. She stared at me intensely. You don't get to rush into that role just because you're feeling guilty. I'm not rushing, I whispered. I'm begging. Her silence was its own storm. Clara scoffed. Touching. But not practical. She turned toward Atakunal. You have 48 hours to decide your position. Public unity or private disappearance. My chest tightened violently. Atakunal's voice hardened. You won't touch my child again. Clara smirked. Bold words. But you built your empire on obedience once. Don't pretend rebellion suits you now. Zainab stepped forward suddenly, eyes blazing. I will not be used as leverage by anyone again. Clara raised an eyebrow. Watch your tone. I've slept on hostile beds with strangers, cleaned toilets for pocket change, cried hot tears into pillows that smelled like other people's lives, Zainab snapped. I'm not your asset. The strength in her voice shook the room. Clara studied her for a moment, something sharp flickering behind her eyes. You sound just like her, she said, glancing my way. Atakunal sighed heavily. Enough. We'll resolve this privately. You'll resolve nothing, Clara replied calmly. The board is already sniffing the air. Her words planted a deep dread inside me. And then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed slightly. Something more serious. More calculating. You might want to sit, she said, voice lowering. Because the press just confirmed a lead on Zainab's origins. Atakunal frowned. What lead? Clara looked directly at me. They believe the missing billionaire heir was sold illegally before she entered the charity system, she said. Sold. The word burned like acid. To who? I whispered, terror gripping my chest. Clara's lips parted slowly. To a family that never intended to keep her hidden forever. My world tilted again. Which family? I breathed. Clara's eyes drifted toward the still open door, and her voice descended to a chilling whisper. The same family that just arrived downstairs claiming ownership rights. The night I discovered the truth about Ifioma and the quiet man who had been watching her from across the street changed something deep inside me. The Lagos air was thick with harmattan dust and unspoken regret, and as I sat in my tinted Range Rover, I realized the story of my life was not as simple as I had always believed. I had spent years convincing myself that I was the victim in our breakup. That Ifioma abandoned me when my dreams were still struggling to breathe. That she chose poverty over perseverance. That she was too impatient for the man I was becoming. But now, seeing her frail body wrapped in worn wrappers, her eyes still holding that familiar fire beneath layers of pain, I knew there was a chapter one had ignored. "You cannot help her now, sir," Adewale, my driver, whispered. "Some people choose their fate." I turned sharply. "Drive away," I ordered, my voice colder than I intended. But my heart disobeyed me. I stepped out of the car before he could respond. The streets were alive with restless sounds, distant generators, hawkers crying, Danfo horns, broken laughter from a nearby beer parlor. And there she was, my Ifioma, sitting on the pavement holding a plastic bag close to her chest like it was her only treasure. I knelt in front of her slowly. "Ifioma," I said again, softer now. "It's me." She raised her eyes and for a moment the world stopped breathing. Her lips trembled and a small, sad laugh escaped her. "So it is true," she murmured. "The universe likes to mock the broken." "What happened to you?" I asked, my billionaire status suddenly meaningless in the face of her suffering. She looked away. "Life happened, Kelechi. The same life that you escaped and I remained to fight." My chest tightened. "You left me. You left me first," she replied bitterly. "Not with words. With ambition that had no room for love. You became Mr. Future Billionaire, and I became an obstacle." Those words struck deeper than any accusation ever could. I saw the pain etched in every line of her face, and I knew she wasn't lying. She had always been truthful. Even when it hurt. "I never knew," I whispered. "You never asked," she replied simply. There was silence between us, heavy and aching. Then I noticed her hand trembling as she tried to hide the plastic bag. "What's in there?" I asked. She hesitated, then slowly opened it. Inside were medical papers, old prescriptions, and a faded photograph. My heart stopped when I saw the picture. A little girl. About 8 years old. Brown skin. My eyes. Her smile. "Ifioma," my breath caught painfully. "Who is this child?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You really don't know, do you?" My pulse thundered in my ears. "Know what?" She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Her name is Amara." The night seemed to collapse around me. "Amara?" "She is your daughter," she said, her words slicing open my world like shattered glass. I staggered back, gripping my chest. "No, that's impossible. You never told me you were pregnant." "I tried," she cried, her voice shaking. "I called. I sent messages. I even came to your gate when you moved to Ikoyi. Your security pushed me away like I was a stray dog. That was the day I realized you had already erased me." My mind replayed fragments of old memories, missed calls, unread messages, the early chaos of success, my obsession with expansion, contracts, and respect. Had I truly been that blind? "Where is she now?" I asked urgently. "Where is Amara?" Ifioma's face twisted with fear. "She is in the hospital. Needs treatment. Serious treatment, Kelechi. I sell fruits during the day and sleep on the streets at night just to buy her medicine, and even that is no longer enough." The weight of guilt crushed me. My own blood was suffering while I toasted champagne at exclusive Lagos galas. "Why didn't you come to me earlier?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "Because pride is the last thing the poor hold on to," she whispered. "And because I didn't want her to grow up knowing a father who only saw her when his conscience woke up." I reached for her hands. They were cold, rough, and tired. "Take me to her. Now." She hesitated, fear clouding her eyes. "Why now, Kelechi? Why after the world celebrated you as the richest man in West Africa?" "Because money without truth is nothing," I said quietly. "And because I refuse to lose my daughter before I even know her." We drove through the restless streets of Lagos in silence. The journey to the government hospital felt longer than my entire rise to power. When we arrived, the smell of disinfectant and despair greeted us. I followed her through dull corridors until she stopped at a small metal bed. "There," she said softly. My eyes landed on a tiny form curled under a thin blanket. Tubes connected to her fragile body. She looked peaceful yet painfully weak. That's Amara, Ifeoma whispered. My knees nearly gave way. I stepped closer, studying her peaceful face. The same dimple I had as a child. The same shape of eyes. This was not just a child. This was my flesh. My lineage. My bloodline crying in silence. She's been asking about you, Ifeoma said, surprising me. What do you tell her? I asked. That her father is fighting battles far away but still loves her, she replied. I never wanted her to hate you even when my heart did. I swallowed hard. Amara will not sleep here another night, I declared. She's getting the best private hospital care. The best doctors. The best treatment Lagos has to offer. Ifeoma turned to me sharply. You think money will wash away 8 years of pain? No, I answered honestly. But it will give her a chance to live. And it will give us a chance to heal. She looked at me, torn between anger and hope. Suddenly, a nurse rushed over, panic visible in her eyes. Madam Ifeoma, she said urgently, your daughter just had a complication. Her breathing is unstable. My heart froze. I looked from the nurse to Amara, then back to Ifeoma, whose face drained of all color. Kelechi, she whispered, gripping my arm. Please, if anything happens to her. I turned toward the doctor rushing into the room, my wealth powerless in that terrifying moment. And as machines began to beep faster around my daughter's bed, I realized the real test of my redemption had only just begun. But as the doctor turned to me with an expression I could not read, my world held its breath, because what he was about to say would change everything forever. The doctor's expression froze me in place. His crisp white coat, his calm hands, and the small clipboard in his grip were all symbols of order, yet the words that followed shattered every sense of control I thought I had. Mr. Kelechi, he said carefully, his voice low. There's something you need to know about Amara's condition. I felt my stomach tighten, my chest constrict. What is it? He exhaled, glanced at the monitors beside the bed, then back at me. Her heart has a congenital defect. If we had known earlier, intervention could have been less risky. We need surgery immediately. It's complicated, but it's possible to save her. I felt the room spin. My daughter. My blood. My responsibility. And I had spent 8 years blind to it. I looked at Ifeoma. She held my gaze, silent, her own fear masked by a fragile mask of strength. Tears brimming, she whispered, Do what you have to, Kelechi. I will, I said firmly. I will not lose her. Not now. Not ever. The surgical team sprang into action. Nurses and doctors moved around the room with urgent precision. I held Ifeoma's hand as she trembled, her grip weak but desperate. You're doing this for her, Kelechi. Not for me, not for anyone else, she said, her voice shaking. You're doing this because she's your daughter. Yes, I said, swallowing hard. Because she's my daughter. The minutes stretched into an eternity as the operation began. I sat outside the operating theater, my hands clenched together, my mind running through every memory, every mistake, every lost opportunity. I thought of the streets she had survived, the nights she had cried alone, the meals she had missed, and the fear that had been her only companion. And I realized, I had failed her. Every bit of absence, every choice I made to prioritize ambition over love, had led to this moment. And now, the weight of redemption pressed on me, heavy and merciless. Hours passed. The city of Lagos carried on outside the hospital walls, oblivious to the storm raging in this small, sterile room. Ifeoma sat beside me, her hands folded, silent. Occasionally she would glance toward the theater, a flicker of fear in her eyes. Finally the surgeon emerged, his expression unreadable. Mr. Kelechi, he said, stopping in front of us. The surgery was successful. I felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. Successful? I whispered. She's okay? He nodded slowly. She's stable. Recovery will be slow, but she's strong. Very strong. I collapsed into a chair, relief and emotion crashing into me all at once. I buried my face in my hands. Thank God, thank God. Ifeoma's hand found mine. She's a fighter, she whispered softly. And so are you. For the first time in years, I felt a fragile thread of hope. A hope I had thought lost forever. Yet as I watched her in the recovery room, hooked up to machines, I realized that survival was only the beginning. The world outside, the people who had hurt us, the choices we had made, the lies that had built walls between us, would not simply vanish. And then Clara's words from earlier echoed in my mind, sharp and venomous. The same family that just arrived downstairs claiming ownership rights. I glanced at the window, seeing the dim outlines of cars parked outside, the shadows moving like predators waiting. The truth hit me like ice in my veins. Our battles were far from over. Clara had her plans. She had allies. And there were those who would stop at nothing to take Amara from us, to claim what was legally hers, and what they believed could give them leverage over me. I clenched my fist. Not if I can help it, I muttered. Ifeoma looked at me with a mixture of fear and trust. What do we do now? I took a deep breath, feeling a new kind of strength awaken. We fight, I said firmly. We protect her. And we uncover every secret that has been buried for far too long. But even as I spoke, a shadow of doubt lingered. The threat outside was real. Clara had made her move and there were others. Powerful, dangerous, and patient. And deep inside, I knew one truth I could not ignore. Amara's life and our redemption depended not only on surviving this moment, but on surviving the storm that had already begun. A storm that had roots deeper than any of us could see, and claws that could reach into the very heart of everything we had built. The door of the hospital suddenly creaked. A figure appeared in the dim hallway outside, tall and imposing. Clara. And behind her, someone I had never expected to see. The person's presence filled the room with a cold, suffocating tension. Ifeoma and I froze. And in that instant, I realized that the past we thought we had escaped was coming back. Not gently, not cautiously, but like a tidal wave ready to destroy everything we had fought for. Because this figure knew Amara. And they were here to claim her. The air grew thick with anticipation, fear, and something darker, unspoken but deadly. I swallowed hard, gripping Ifeoma's hand. Stay close, I whispered. Because what happened next could change our lives forever, and there was no turning back. The figure in the hallway was tall, imposing, but as they stepped into the light, my breath caught. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone I had once trusted. My childhood mentor, Mr. Obina, the man who had helped me navigate Lagos when my family had nothing, who had always quietly guided me through storms I didn't even understand I was in. He approached cautiously, his eyes soft but sharp, taking in the scene. Ifeoma trembling beside me, Amara lying fragile yet alive, and Clara standing behind, her smug composure faltering slightly at the sight of someone she hadn't anticipated. Kelechi, Mr. Obina said, his voice low but commanding respect. I've been tracking Clara's movements for months. You're not alone in this. She cannot touch Amara. Not now. Not ever. A wave of relief washed over me so strong it nearly made me collapse. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of fear lift, replaced by the unsteady pulse of hope. Clara's lips tightened. This isn't over, she hissed, but even her words lacked the certainty they had held before. You overestimated yourself, Clara, I said firmly. Amara's life is not your leverage. She is my daughter. And we will protect her. Ifeoma pressed closer to me, her hand warm in mine. You mean it, Kelechi? She asked softly, tears glistening in her eyes. You'll fight for her? Yes, I whispered. For her, for us, for every stolen year. Mr. Obina stepped forward, producing official documents from a leather folder. The trust fund and legal claims have been secured. Clara cannot interfere, nor can her allies. The courts will protect Amara's rights. Everything is ready. I felt a surge of gratitude I couldn't articulate. For so long I had believed wealth could fix everything. Now I realized it was courage, truth, and love that mattered most. The following days were a whirlwind. Amara's recovery was steady but slow, her tiny body regaining strength with each passing hour. I visited her constantly, reading to her, holding her hand, whispering the stories I had longed to tell since the moment I first discovered her existence. Ifeoma stayed beside me, her presence a steady anchor in the storm. We laughed softly at small victories, a stable heartbeat, a tiny giggle, a grasp of my finger, and mourned quietly over the time we had lost. But each day was a step forward, each day a chance to rebuild what life had torn apart. Clara, true to form, tried to manipulate the media, whispering lies and attempting to claim leverage. But the courts, armed with evidence and Mr. Obina's meticulous records, shut her down. She disappeared from our lives as quickly as she had intruded, powerless against the truth and the love that bound us. One bright morning, as sunlight spilled into Amara's hospital room, she reached out her tiny hand toward me. Papa? She whispered, her voice a fragile echo of innocence. My heart ached with emotion. Yes, Amara, I said, tears streaming freely. It's me, your papa. Always. She giggled, the sound so pure it seemed to cleanse the years of pain and separation. Ifeoma smiled through her own tears, relief and joy mingling on her face. For the first time in years, the three of us sat together without fear, without danger, without shadows from the past looming over us. Amara curled in my lap, her small arms gripping me, and I swore I would never let anything harm her again. Weeks later we moved into a warm, welcoming home in Lagos. The city still roared around us, still carried chaos in every corner, but inside our walls there was laughter, love, and healing. Amara thrived, her personality bright and curious, her eyes constantly searching mine with recognition and trust. One evening as we watched the sunset over the Lagos skyline, Ifeoma took my hand. "We survived," she whispered. "Yes," I said, pulling her close. "We survived everything. And now we have a chance to build the family we always dreamed of." Amara tugged at my sleeve. "Papa, tell me a story," she demanded, her voice filled with the simple, unguarded joy of childhood. I smiled, lifting her into my arms. "Once upon a time," I began, knowing that the story of our lives was no longer one of loss, betrayal, or heartbreak. It was a story of love, resilience, and triumph. As the golden light of the sunset bathed our home, I knew this was only the beginning. The past had tested us. The streets had shaped us. But together we were unstoppable. And for the first time in a long while, my heart was at peace.